Now, the mediation efforts continue in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. However, as the fighting continues, diverse peace plans have been put forward. French President Emmanuel Macron has now arrived in Jordan after a visit to Israel and the West Bank. Amid calls for a slowdown, Israeli officials continue to be adamant on the expected ground offensive, while the death toll keeps on mounting. More than 700 Palestinians were killed overnight by Israeli airstrikes as per Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry. Now, this is the highest 24-hour death toll since the war broke out. The Israeli military says it had hit over 400 Hamas targets and killed dozens of militants overnight. Meanwhile, rocket warning sirens continue to ring in Israel. They sounded in several central Israel towns in the last 24 hours. Visuals show Israel's Iron Dome intercepting the fired rockets. Moving on to an equally pressing issue next. The humanitarian crisis, the humanitarian aid access to Gaza, which remains limited. On Tuesday, 8 trucks containing water, food and medicine were able to enter the besieged enclave. The permission is for 20 trucks. The actual requirement is for 100 trucks. The actual daily movement of trucks before this October 7th war started was 500 trucks. However, the number was supposed to be much higher than this. Now, no explanation has been provided why the rest of the trucks did not enter. A total of 54 aid trucks have entered Gaza over the last several days, which isn't enough for more than 2 million people. Gaza needs a much higher volume of aid. And a discussion regarding this took place in the United Nations Security Council on Tuesday. All nations agreed that more humanitarian aid should be delivered into Gaza, and it needs to be done urgently. But nations proposed rival plans for the same. The US has called for a pause in the conflict so that the aid could be delivered. A pause is generally considered a less formal and a shorter version of a ceasefire. However, Russia wants a complete and immediate ceasefire for the humanitarian aid to pass through. Now, this plan is backed by all Arab nations as well. Now, as UN debates the issue, Gaza is running out of crucial materials. Hospitals in Gaza are operating without fuel, and doctors have warned that critical equipment like incubators for newborns could stop working as well. Let's take a look at some visuals. Now, as per the World Health Organization, 6 hospitals in Gaza forced to shut down due to lack of fuel. As per UN, Gaza needs at least 160,000 liters of fuel per day to power basic necessities. Meanwhile, Western nations continue their shuttle diplomacy as they engage with Israeli and Arab leaders. In the latest, the French President Emmanuel Macron met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, and will now meet Jordan's King Abdullah II. Macron, during his meet with Palestinian leadership, reiterated the need for a two-state solution. He called for an immediate cessation of the aggression on Gaza, while in Israel, the French president proposed an international coalition fighting Islamic State in Iraq and Syria to widen its scope to include the fight against Hamas in Gaza. Macron gave no details on how the US-led coalition of dozens of countries, of which Israel is not a member, could be involved.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président.
Now, as per his advisors, this coalition would not necessarily imply any kind of Western soldiers or boots on the ground, but could include intelligence sharing, which is the need of the hour. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not directly comment on Macron's proposal, but said that the fight was a battle between the axis of evil and the free world. US President Joe Biden spoke with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman about the situation in West Asia. Biden affirmed that the United States fully supports the defense of US partners facing terrorist threats. The two leaders agreed on pursuing broader diplomatic efforts to maintain stability across the region and prevent the conflict from expanding. Meanwhile, Netanyahu told his soldiers that a ground offensive is coming. He said that the offensive was still on track amid a growing sense of military delay. Israeli Chief of Staff also said that the country's forces are ready for a ground operation in Gaza. Defense Minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, also warned soldiers to be prepared.